get started on time today. Thank you for joining us. I know it's a beautiful day out, so you could be a lot of places right now, but you're on our awesome Stein Wealth Professional Series, and we're super lucky to have Jackie Von Thun, who I've known for, I think I've known you for what, probably 10 years now, Jackie, don't you think?
Yeah, at least.
Yeah. So she's a real estate agent with Realty One, and she's been in the industry for over 17 years, and she's worked in different capacities. So one of the nice things about Jackie is she understands like the whole facet, like all the facets of the selling process. But she has some good stuff to talk to you about today because we're in a really interesting real estate market. I'm sure most of you have been catching little tidbits about that on the news or talking to friends. So we thought this would be really timely for her to share with you some of the important things you should know about just in general, the impact of low interest rates on the real estate market in general. Is your home ready to list, and sort of like an outlook and overview of buying in 2021. So Jackie, thank you for being here today. I'm going to just turn it over to you and let you get to the good stuff, and then we can let people ask questions. By the way, while Jackie's talking, I think you can press a little button to sort of like raise your hand. There's like a chat. You can either raise your hand or there's a chat on the right that you can use to ask questions. And Jackie, I'll stop you if there are any. And then at the end, we'll open up for a Q&A and people can actually ask questions. Sound good?
Great. Sounds perfect.
All right, take it away.
All right. Thanks, Melissa, for having me today. I really appreciate that. As she had said, I've been in the real estate business for a very long time. I didn't realize it until I did the math. So I work for Realty One Group out of the Peters Township office, but I cover all of Western Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh area. And then prior to that, I worked for a lender and also 2 different builders in Pittsburgh. So if you have questions on anything about that, I'm your girl. So let's talk about the real estate market that we're in now. It is insane. There just isn't enough inventory. So what that means, it's a seller's market. So right now, if you are looking to sell your home, it is a perfect time because there are buyers out there. There are multiple offers out there. I pulled some statistics from NAR, the National Association of Realtors, and the average days on market is 17 days. The average offers that people are getting are 5. Even locally, I can attest, I just had a listing. We are doing no shows until the open house. That seems to be what's working best. So that way we list it, it's on the market for a couple of days, letting it filter through all the systems. So then buyers get a chance to set up a time to come and see the home. So once we do that, then we accept offers. And I received 5 offers on that property, and that property was in North Strabane. So we're seeing the same thing, even in the Pittsburgh market, where typically Pittsburgh, we're very conservative. So to have a market like this here, it's very interesting to me to see this because we're not in California or Arizona. Pittsburgh has notoriously been very, very stable. We do have a higher population of elderly people too. So, but everybody is asking, well, why? Why are we seeing this? What is happening? There's a couple of reasons. The first reason is the interest rates. Interest rates are crazy low right now. So because they're so low, that is allowing more buyers into the market because then they're qualifying, they can afford more house. There's less baby boomers moving. They're staying in their house a lot longer. And then the millennials, it opened up to millennials. There's so many more millennials that are in the market now as well. So those are, the couple of reasons why people are, out and looking. And because the rates are so low, people aren't moving because they refinanced. I mean, if they're getting a wonderful rate, they're refinancing, having the same payment, maybe a 15-year loan if they just moved into their house. So those are a couple reasons why we're seeing that. In addition to that, because of COVID, some people still don't feel comfortable. Some people do. We do have different COVID protocols in place, but that's another reason. And then lastly, the foreclosures have stopped. So a lot of people, as soon as COVID happened, they went straight into forbearance, whether they needed to or not, because it was an option, they went into forbearance. So some people, they may need to sell at some point, but right now banks can't foreclose on homes because of COVID. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. And then, another thing that we're seeing in the market too, from a builder's perspective are costs. The costs are going up because the lumber costs are skyrocketing. So a couple of the builders that I know in the Pittsburgh market, every week they're getting new pricing just because they're getting pricing from corporate and, trying to figure all those things out. So yeah, so that's what we're seeing right now. And then in regards to listing your home, or if you're a buyer, I have a whole checklist that I could provide as to where to start, what things in your home that you might have to fix, what things you may not have to fix, because you want to look at the current market. That's what's going to be important to you, not, looking at things that happened 3 years ago, because real estate is so local and, it's so what's happening, within 3 months or so. So, and a lot of things are changing too, just with everything that we're seeing right now. So is there any questions or anything that maybe you wanted to discuss?
If anyone has any questions, raise their hand. I have one in the meantime.
Okay.
If you want to raise your hand, you just kind of put your mouse down to the bottom a little bit and kind of put the little raise hand. So as far as, the reasoning for it being this seller's market, there's just to kind of like recap for me. So there's more millennials out looking. So there's more people looking. Less people are leaving their homes because they either refinanced, or do you find a lot of people have done like home improvements and then they're saying, well, I'm just going to stay?
Yes.
Because I feel like I've heard a lot of that happening as well.
Right.
And then obviously interest rates are low, which I could expound upon why they're low if we needed to at some point. But I mean, the Fed's keeping rates really low to try to stimulate the economy, and that translates into low mortgage rates. And they're saying they're going to keep them as low as they are until 2023. I have some thoughts on that. They may not. I mean, we'll see. I mean, those rates may get pushed up higher sooner than we think, but that makes it more affordable than even renting in some cases, right? So like people who couldn't have afforded a house a year ago can now, because the mortgage rates have gotten so much lower. I do have okay, go ahead.
Back to the buyer who's redoing their house or staying in their house. I had a buyer and they quit looking because they were sick of the multiple offers. They got frustrated. They're like, you know what? We're just going to take some money and we're going to do some improvements to our home. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, some people, you have to be patient in this market.
Yeah. Well, I guess my question for you would be is like, are there any signs of that inventory improving? Like how long is it going to take? I mean, in your opinion, like for that to happen? Because I know we're having supply chain issues. So the reason the cost of like lumber and steel and all that have gone up is partially, well, it's a couple different things, and I'll just comment on it since it's kind of my department, but I've been watching it because A, I'm building a house, but B, also from a financial perspective, I mean, like I read up on these things every day, but specifically I'm looking at the price of lumber, but and steel, but basically it's a supply and demand issue. The supply went down as a result of COVID, but they actually intentionally started producing less, thinking that there wasn't going to be as much building. And then what happened was COVID actually produced more building demand because people wanted to do all these improvements. So it was like a double whammy. So that's not going to stabilize for a while. So like those prices being high, I mean, you can't get steel and lumber and the prices are high. So how long is it going to take for inventory to improve? Like, do you have any information about that?
That is a great question. And I wish I had a crystal ball to answer that. But I mean, I can say this is our spring market and this is the hot time for houses to be listed, especially coming into May into June where, kids graduate and if people are looking to downsize, and we're still not seeing the listings. So I don't know, to be quite honest with you. I guess
they have to start building more houses and a lot faster because they've been building houses at a lesser rate since 2008 and 2009 anyway. So like,
right. And to think like of businesses, like even in South Point, I was through there yesterday and it's like a ghost town because so many more employees are having their employers work from home. So back to the lumber and the fixing their homes, people need home offices. So they're, making those adjustments too. And that's another reason why more buyers are out, because they're like, oh my gosh, I've been in this house, I've outgrown it. So now I need something new.
So if you do want to buy a house right now, what's your advice? Like, what are some of the tactics you using to like make it?
Well, the first and foremost is speaking with the lender. And I have a list of lenders if you need somebody, because getting that pre-qualification, not just the pre-qualification, but actually taking the file into the underwriting process. So that way, if you are putting in an offer, you have the strongest offer ever because it's already been through underwriting. So that just speeds the process up.
Okay, and let me stop you
And
for one sec. I'm so just could you expound upon that for 1 minute? Because I find a lot of people don't understand the difference between a pre-approval and the actual approval for the mortgage. You're saying like most people just go out and get a pre-approval, which is like
right.
kind of like a temporary, like I think this person could get the loan, right? But
Exactly. So it's okay. I'm Susie Smith. Here's my social security number. I work here. This is what I make. More of a verbal. They do run credit. And then based upon the information that you provide, they can issue a pre-approval letter. What I mean by going through the underwriting process, you're submitting more information. So you're submitting your pay stubs, you're submitting your tax returns, you're giving more and more details. So then they can take that information and put it into their underwriting
pretty
system.
much getting the loan.
Exactly. So you're kind of jumping further down the line than you typically would. Because when you put an offer in, you have to have a pre-approval. So if you have it through that underwriting process, that just shows that you're a stronger buyer.
Okay, that's good advice.
Okay. And then also, if you have a house to sell and you're looking to buy a house, there's no way that your offer is going to be accepted contingent upon that house selling. So there's different loan programs out there to help you with, kind of finagling that, or, you might want to sell that home first and move in with parents or get an apartment or something and to find your new place.
Okay.
So it's all those logistics that kind of go into place. So having that the strongest, buyer qualification, that's what's going to win.
So
Win the
actually
deal.
be like really approved for your loan,
Right.
knowing that you can, being ready to move right away.
Correct. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I've heard some people that have been talking about doing like they sell their house but then rent it back from the new owner for a year. Can you tell me about that a little bit?
Well, typically it wouldn't be that long because if you were selling your house and a buyer came in, when a buyer has to close on that house, they have to physically move into that house per the loan requirements within 30 days. So sometimes a lease back does happen, but it's more so 30 days or less. So it gives them a little bit more time. Now, I did have an instance where my folks, that's how they won the bid, because they closed later and they actually pushed it to 45 days. So that's how they ended up getting the house. So that was the
literally like the smallest things can be the difference
Right.
between you getting the house or somebody else.
Correct. Yeah. And a lot of it just comes down to what the seller needs and what's really motivating the seller at that time. This last deal that I had not only the buyers wrote a letter to the seller, but the buyer's agent wrote a letter, because these people, they keep losing on houses and they, really love this house. So, I mean, there's so many different
So
ways.
they were appealing to them emotionally about, I love
Right.
your house. I can grow
Yes.
a family here,
Mhm.
that kind of thing or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I had another listing where I received an offer that it was over list, but it also, during the home inspections, the buyer said they would give $2,000 towards any improvements that need to be done from the home inspection. Where typically what happens, once you have the home inspection done, if there's anything that's on there, you go back to the seller and ask them to make those repairs. So that was their way to kind of flip it to win the deal.
So you have to be really creative.
Correct. Well, you have to know it's tough too, because if you can find out what is motivating that seller, then that's key.
Okay. That's interesting. Those are some
Yeah.
good ideas though. Anything else? I mean, besides like, how do you go in with the strongest buyer qualification? I mean, obviously there's the financial qualifications. I mean, if you're a cash buyer, that's probably even sweeter.
Right.
But
Yeah.
most people can't do that, right? I mean, well, some
Right.
people can, but most of the time, in
Yeah. The hand money. I mean, typically the hand money is 1 to 2%. So a lot of times, if you add more, it really shows that you're strong and you really want that house. And then your contingency. So 90% of the people have it contingent on a home inspection, radon, pest inspection.
you can waive
And
those.
yeah, if you wanted to waive those, you could. Now, what's interesting, a fellow colleague of mine, she had a buyer come in the buyer during the showing brought their home inspector before they put the offer in. So that way they had that done ahead of time to
So
make sure. I mean, they looked at the seller's disclosure that the seller had completed to see if there was anything wrong. And there really wasn't much that was on there. So they decided to do it that way. So then they could waive that. Now, I don't recommend that being waived to my clients. If they want to, it's up to them. But at the end of the day, that's going to protect you, because the seller's disclosure can be filled out and I can walk you through the home, but until an inspector physically sees it, I mean, you're taking the risk.
yeah, that's probably advisable, I would
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah, so from the buyer's perspective and then from the seller's perspective, if someone was looking to list right now, I mean, most people, they want to see clean, clear, decluttered, depersonalized. I mean, even though it is a seller's market, you're still selling your home and it has to look show ready.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of buyers that are out there, but you still want it to look at its best.
Mm-hmm.
And people are looking at kitchens and bathrooms, and also just the cleanliness of it. When you walk in that front door, making sure the toilet seats are down, small things like that really stand out.
Well, so if you are thinking about selling your house now, I mean, we always get questions, and I specifically get a lot of questions about what kind of improvements should I make in order to sell my house. And then, I mean, and I think lately that may have changed a little bit, because I've heard a lot of people say, well, it's a seller's market, so you don't really have to do anything. I mean, is that really true? Or, I mean, so maybe speak to, like, what are the best improvements to make, and what are some that really you don't get your money back for usually. And then number one, then number two, maybe give us sort of like a list of, like, what are the best things to do to get your house ready to sell.
Okay. The biggest thing is, well, the first, let's just start on the outside, your curb appeal. I mean, make sure that yard looks great.
So landscape freshened up.
Yeah, landscape and just painting. Like I said, your front door, around the garage, any trim. And those are easy fixes too. That's something that you could, bang out in a couple hours. But that really just shows that you've taken care of your home, you take pride in your home. And then inside your home, if you have any bright colors, like any reds or pinks, like, just get them painted neutral.
Mm-hmm.
So those are definitely the top things. And then really just taking down your personalization, any family pictures, if you have any collection of anything. So less is best, because you want that person to come in and really see them living there with their family and their furniture. And then, kitchens and bathrooms. Kitchens and bathrooms, those are always the hot
Where you get your
spots.
money back.
Yeah.
So when you say, like, decluttering, how do you feel about it being empty versus leaving some furniture to stage, if you have
Keeping
that
some,
option?
yeah, if you have that option. If not, like with some of my clients who have to, if they move out and it's vacant, I can do virtual staging. So my photographer, he'll take a picture of it empty, and then I'll set it up to have virtual staging done. So you'll see the picture of it empty and the picture of it staged.
Mm-hmm.
But typically people can't see, I mean,
They
they
can't.
can't visualize anything if it's completely empty. Like a
So is
lot
it
of people,
better to have something, but
yeah,
not?
it's always better to have something than completely empty. But if it has to be, we can work around that.
Okay. All right. And as far as, like, more improvements, like, a lot of people are like, well, I just got all new windows. I just did a new roof. It has a new furnace. I mean, those things are great, but do you really
Right.
actually get your money back for those? Or is it a basic expectation that, like, hey, that should
Yeah.
already be done?
Right. Because yeah, I mean, those are just maintaining your home. Those are things that you do as a homeowner. And when you do have it under contract and an inspector comes, he's looking for major things that happen to the home. So, in the windows, I mean, that's a huge expense for someone. In the roof. So, and I think too, like a lot of people, they just forget that they're the homeowner and they have to maintain the home as well.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you want your furnace working, you want your air conditioner working, you want to make sure you have those things checked. Changing your furnace filter. I mean, you wouldn't believe the people that don't change their furnace filter. I mean, small things like that just over time. And, if you're selling and people know how well you're taking care of your home, you're going to get your money back for
Yeah.
sure.
So you think, okay, but those things are those, like, getting a new furnace, is that going to add onto the like selling value of your house?
I'd
Like
say yes, because
the
if
price.
if someone comes in and you have a 20-year-old furnace, they're
Okay.
going to take that into consideration
Yeah.
as to when they're putting their offer, because they know in their mind, I might have to get a new furnace 1 to 2 years down the road,
Right.
or replace the roof, or replace these windows,
Okay.
big ticket items.
Okay.
But
What are
again,
some,
even though we're in that seller's market, we're still homeowners, and we're still, people are still thinking about costs down the road.
right. So giving them the least amount of objections
Right.
possible.
Yep.
Although it is a seller's market, so there's probably a little more leeway there than usual.
Yeah.
Maybe
I mean, more people, they're a
they're
little
willing
bit
to
more
accept more.
flexible. Yeah,
Yeah, they can't be as nitpicky because
exactly. Because it is what it is. And they know that there's going to be multiple offers. So
okay. What are some of the other pitfalls that you see people running into, like when they're trying to sell their house, like fallacies or like things that people, I mean, I hear a lot of these things, so that's why I'm asking you, like people will say
smells,
to me, like
animal smells. So or animal, just
areas,
areas in the yard, things like that. Those are big things. And
trying to get those like
people,
remedied beforehand.
right. And we live in an HGTV world.
Yeah,
So everyone's a DIYer. Well, that doesn't always work, because how you perceive it, how someone else perceives it. And then also, candles and air fresheners. That's no, because then people think that you're hiding something.
hiding something, yeah.
Yeah. But
I
I
never
think,
even thought of that, yeah.
yeah. So things like that, it's just, and less is best. Just start pack. You're moving. So start packing stuff up, because
Declutter,
they want to see the room. They need to see the space, and that's what's going to sell the home.
get a storage
Now,
area, pack it up,
right.
put it in there.
Or even the garage. Like my husband gets so upset because he's like, how come there's never any pictures of the garage? I'm like, people usually don't care. If they do, they'll see it there. Or that's where people are storing their stuff, because they're taking everything out of the house, and that's where it needs to go.
Yeah, that makes
So
sense. Well, and I think a lot of people's garages are generally just a dumping ground. I've seen that as
exactly.
well.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. It's not like the area you want to showcase. So, okay.
Right.
All right. No, that's all really helpful. I mean, it's definitely an interesting market. I don't know when inventory will improve either. I mean, I've done some research on it. I mean, the reality is because until the supply chain, like supply and demand kind of the supply catches up to the demand with like the lumber and the like the steel and the building costs. And I mean, quite frankly, there's not even labor to build the houses fast enough. Like I don't,
Right.
it's going to take a while. I would think from a common sense standpoint, like as a financial person, that it's probably going to take a year plus for this to even start to equalize, just based on what I'm seeing from the
Yeah.
supply demand issues, the supply chain needing to heal, the production to pick up, and then also the labor. Because quite frankly, a lot of that labor force, they're just sitting back because they have gotten stimulus payments and they have
Right.
other money, there's extended unemployment. I mean, I know contractors that are trying to get people to work, and they know them, and they're saying, hey, like, I'm hanging out right now. Like, I'll be back in a few months. So I think it'll be interesting. I'm not sure what it's going to take to heal that inventory issue, or how long it's going to take either. I mean, until that gets, interest rates start to go back up, and there's more supply of houses. I mean, I don't see this market changing. Do you?
No, I would say at least another year. I mean, especially with the whole unemployment and the stimulus and people not working. I mean, even the other day, I took my son to get a Frosty at Wendy's, and we were going to go in. We couldn't. I thought it was COVID. Well, it wasn't. I asked the lady, and she said, we don't have enough people to work.
Yeah.
So people aren't work. I mean, it's just a whole scheme
I
of
know.
things that are
I had to
happening.
take our car to get repaired at NTB, and we showed up, they're like, hey, our mechanic, we only have one mechanic right now, and he has COVID. So you can't fix your car today. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the same thing. And a lot of it is like the vocational, I think, so contractors, what do you call it? Mechanics, like that. I mean, it's true. Like there's
Right.
not enough labor, there's not enough supply. And there's already been like a shortage of houses being built since 2009.
Right. Well, see, and that's what I was going to say too. I know that we're in the seller's market, but this is the worst seller's market. We've been in a seller's market the past couple of years. Like this just didn't
It
do a
just,
switch because
it,
of COVID. It's
right.
just, yeah,
It was
exactly.
already there. It just pushed it into a more, probably like severe version of that, I would think.
Right. And we are grateful because when COVID happened, real estate in Pennsylvania shut down completely. Our state and California, we were the only two states that could not do anything. Like we weren't allowed to do anything for 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a challenge too. And, but right now we have all the COVID protocols in place and there's, different forms and it really depends on the client and how they feel. I mean, I have some clients, they don't really care. There's other clients where they're like, well, we want everybody that comes in to wear a mask and to wear gloves. So it's up to the seller and what their comfort level is.
Yeah. Well, and that's good to know. And I think we're just kind of like getting out of this. So people are still concerned about that and want to
Right.
make sure that, they're safe.
Yeah.
Well, this is all really helpful. I did have one other question for you, but kind of flew out of my head at the moment. Is there anything else that you wanted to share, just in general about this market or tips? Or you mentioned you had a checklist for getting your home ready to sell.
Yeah.
If you give that to us, we're going to blast this out, the replay out. We can attach it underneath.
Okay. Yeah.
On it, if that's something that you,
Yep.
that you feel comfortable doing, because I think people would find that to be very useful. I mean, I get those questions all the time. Like people don't know how much money to spend,
Well, too, I mean, most people, like they've been in their house, like my one client, like they've been 10 years, which a lot changes in 10 years, and it's not every day that you're selling a house and buying a house and, keeping up with the real estate market if it's not the market that you're in. So,
yeah, no, that's,
but yeah, I could share that with you. And then, like I said, if anyone needs a lender, that would be, something that I have available too.
yeah. Do you have any, actually, I remembered my question now. So I always like to ask this of other professionals because I know, this is just for general education, but when people are going to start the process of buying or selling a house, like, I mean, how do you recommend that they go about looking for a realtor or a lender? Like, is there certain criteria that you think they should be looking for? Because I know there's a lot of lenders, a lot of realtors out there. There's some are probably better than others. Like, is there like a few minimum, like, are there some things that you would tell people to look for?
Well, for a lender, I always recommend local because if you don't have somebody who's local, they don't understand Pennsylvania's closing costs. They don't understand, like, for example, in Western Pennsylvania, Peters Township, the transfer taxes are higher than if you were to buy in the city of Pittsburgh, because city of Pittsburgh's even higher, where most everywhere else is 2%. Where in other states, they don't have that. So it's always, I mean, even for closing companies too, because the buyer gets to select who they use for closing. So it's always best to have somebody local.
Mm-hmm.
Now, keep in mind, you don't have to stay with that lender. If you talk with them, or if you interview 3 of them and you start with one and you're not happy, you can always switch lenders.
Okay.
So that's, but usually once you're, talking with them and if you interview them, you stick with them because then you're, making that decision. And the same goes for agents as well. I mean, I've been interviewed and I knew that they were interviewing 2 other people because at the end of the day, you have to feel comfortable. You're going to be working with this person a lot. So that would definitely be my advice.
Like, for example, if you're going to be buying a house in Peters, you probably want to find someone who's experienced around that area, not someone who's working over on like the east side of Pittsburgh. Is that true?
Right. Yes, because they know that area more so because they're in that area, they're living in that area, they're always working in that area. They know the other agents in that area well too. But not to say that, I've listed houses in the city of Pittsburgh. So because it was a referral from a friend who trusted me. And I really think with real estate, just like any business, you're going to work with who you know, like, and trust and who you feel comfortable with. And it comes down to personality. A lot of times too, because you're trusting this person and you're working with them and, it's not every day you buy a house.
Mm-hmm. And I would think with lenders, do you find the process, I hear a lot of complaints about basically refinancing, even getting a home equity line of credit, getting a new mortgage, how difficult it is with these lenders. Do you find that the smaller local lenders that have a more personalized, expedited process versus like some of the larger like bank names? Or do you think it's kind of like just contingent upon the specific lender? Because I do hear a lot of complaining about that lately. I have one client who literally gave up. He said, I've been trying to refinance for 2 months. They've asked me for the same documents 55,000 times. I'm not giving them to them anymore. And then they were like, I'm just not doing it. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, that sounds like
did you
somebody
hear
who's not
anything?
doing. Well, I mean, I do hear from the bigger banks that it's more difficult because you're not talking to someone local who's doing this every day. It
They
might be
like
someone
shipping it
in,
off to another city or something.
right. And they're dealing with how many people and how many loans. And, right now with the refis, like you figure if they're in a different city and they're covering like 3 states, that's a lot on their plate too. So, and
Okay.
there's a lot of people that are still refinancing because rates are still amazing.
Yeah. And quite frankly, I think that actually should be noted here, which is there are a lot of people who don't realize they should be refinancing. I mean,
Right.
we've been trying to get the word out here. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot. I mean, what I think, are they still around 3.05 for a 30?
Yeah, they're in a little bit below 3.
Right
I
now, they're
mean,
below again. Okay. Because for a while,
yeah,
it kind of like ticked back up there.
yeah, because the one closing they were at 2.7 is what they got.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on like the term, like if it's a 10.
Right.
But people don't
Yeah.
realize, like, yeah, one of the strategies I've been talking about doing with clients a lot is if they are refinancing, if their loan is getting lower, sometimes it's really cheaper to do a home equity line of credit or a home equity loan as opposed to a mortgage, because the closing costs are a lot less. It's more
Right.
simplified. And then, the break even is, faster.
And the equity is there. I mean, I can say the past few deals that I've had no issues with appraisals
Oh,
coming back
I'm
low.
so glad you said that. There seems
Yeah.
to be, in the past few years, it seemed to be that appraisals were sometimes even coming in lower than
Right.
what someone was willing to pay for the house.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of that was sort of the remnants of what happened in 2008 and 9, when houses were being overvalued.
Yeah.
And so the banks were overvaluing them. And that really led to, part of the financial, downturn during that
Yeah.
time, because banks were overvaluing the properties. And so what happened is after that, the appraisal process kind of went the other direction, where they became so conservative. I would
Right.
have people telling me, I'm trying to buy this house and I can't get my loan because it won't appraise high enough.
Yeah.
You're not seeing that anymore.
No, not at all.
All
I
right.
mean, there have been cases where the appraised value came in less than the sales price, and at that point, the buyer either has to come with more cash or the seller has to come down in the price. But typically, knock on wood, we haven't had any appraisal issues.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So, I mean, I do think, everybody should be looking at, what kind of mortgage do I have? What's it structured like? Is the interest rate higher than they are now? If so, what a refinance makes sense? Can I shave, even if it's not because you save money on the payment or interest, but can you shave a few years off, pay it off soon?
Right.
I mean, this is the opportunity to do it now. And I know it's a little bit painful because you have to gather all your financial documents and everything, but I mean, I did a calculation for a client last week, and it was the difference between him paying $110,000 in mortgage over the next 15 years, or interest over the next 15 years, or it was like 70,000.
Wow.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
a $40,000 difference in just
Yeah.
extra cost. And I mean, it definitely made sense for that person to refinance. And he actually didn't want to. And I kept trying to convince him to. And finally, I showed him the numbers. He was like, fine.
Yeah. Well, that's
I'll
what,
do it.
once you see that on paper broken down, you're like, wow, that's crazy. And even, I mean, of course, I'm a realtor. I want to buy, people to buy and sell homes. But I mean, as soon as I knew what the rates were doing, I'm like, I was telling everyone that I knew that wasn't moving, refund, take a look, just
Right.
call. It doesn't hurt to talk to someone to
That's what I
see.
always say. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's a weird emotional. I think people they don't want a mortgage. They want to pay it off. So they think that by
Right.
refinancing, that always means resetting the amortization,
Right.
which you are. But sometimes it can still be beneficial, and you can either pay it off at the same time with less cost to you, or
Right.
pay it off sooner. And I mean, that absolutely makes sense, especially if someone's driving towards retirement. Like, I always try, if we can get their house paid off by retirement, it's a weight off their shoulders. It really helps,
Exactly.
keep cash flow tighter, and it makes a whole lot of sense. So I know we're kind of digressing, but it does.
Yeah, no,
I
that's
know you
fine.
have a lot of lending experience, but it also, I think it ties into everything that we're talking about now. So, I do think that it's a good environment to be looking at that. And I always use bankrate.com. You can go on there, like if you're buying and selling a house, I think that's a great resource for people to start to look at, like, if I buy this house for this much and put this much down, what's my payment going to look like, right?
Right.
I always tell them to go on and just play with it. There's like a mortgage refinance calculator. It's a great resource for all these rates and everything too. So I'll post that on the with along with your checklist. I'll put that link.
Okay. Yeah, I'll send that over to you too.
Yeah. Those are all my questions. Does anyone else have any questions? No? You can raise our hands. Most people are shy with the questions. I'm always full of them though.
Yeah, feel free to call, text me, email me, whatever works.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, thank you for having me today.
Yeah, it's an interesting time, and I know you can be a great resource, and you understand the process from kind of start to finish, even with the construction end of things too. I mean, that's big for people who are doing new construction, because I think there's going to be more of that. Because if there aren't any
Right.
homes to buy, people are going to probably
Yeah.
look at building more.
Yep. For sure.
Anyway, okay. Well, thank you so much again for this. Very informative. If anybody has any questions, you could always email info@steinwealth.com. We'll get you, the right information. Jackie's also posted on our website under our professional connections. If you did have any questions for her, I know she's a great person and always a good resource. And we appreciate your time today and being on our call. If you have any suggestions or topics you want to hear about, you could also shoot an email over to info@steinwealth, or anywhere on our website. You could just submit, a suggestion. We're always open to that as well. I hope everybody has a great day. It looks pretty out there, but it might rain later, I guess. And I can't believe it's going to be June.
I know. And the pool's open this weekend. I'm so
I
excited.
know. And COVID's lifting, and like we can go outside and enjoy
Yeah.
ourselves. So I think 2021 is going to be a better year than 2020. I hope. And hopefully the real estate market well, it's good that it's still a hot market, but hopefully
Yeah.
some of the inventory will pick up and people have more choices.
Right. Yep.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Talk to you soon. Bye.